So it's been a few days now since Clorinde came out, and after playing her extensively on my account, I can finally sit down and give you my overall thoughts and opinion on this shiny new Electro DPS. Before getting into her pros and cons, let me quickly introduce the way I played Clorinde on my account. So in the first few days, I played her mostly in Aggravate and in Quick Bloom, with units like Fischl C6, Baisu C0, Kazuha C0, Yao Yao, or Furina. It's worth noting for you guys that I don't own a Nahida on my account, so I couldn't play her with Nahida in Aggravate team, and I didn't try Kirara as a shielder in the same types of teams because my Kirara is level 50. I don't really plan on leveling up this unit. During my playtesting, I tried 3 different builds on Clorinde. Here they are. Feel free to pause to check the details for each one. The Maréchaussée build was used when played with Furina, and the 2 others were used to see which one felt the best to play, especially when it comes to her very particular uptime. We'll talk about that in a bit. So now that you have the overall context of the testing on my account, let's talk about her pros and cons with some background footage of my different runs in the Abyss with her different teams. Starting with the pros, I think that she has great visuals and animations. They went with this lightning fast attacks and feeling, and I think they really nailed it when it comes to that impression. She's like fast as lightning, and yeah, it really shows. She has a form of self-sustain in the fact that she can heal herself, and that is especially like noticeable with Furina, thanks to the incoming healing bonus that comes from her kit, and that synergized really well with Clorinde. Another positive about her is the fact that you can go in any direction, which can make you select your target or the area of the fight you want to be in. I think if we didn't have that and relied only on the auto target of the game, she would have felt absolutely horrible to play. And I'm really glad that they implemented that. And you will see later on, I will explain how using the direction keys is really important, because the auto-targeting sometimes does auto-targeting stuff. She has also decent range, so you can dash a bit far from the enemies and still deal damage without the need to be super up close, like Navia, for example. She has a form of skill expression, because you can alternate basically the usage of the burst, the usage of the E, or sometimes both, depending on your needs. It's really cool to be like a bit flexible in that regard. And lastly, in terms of energy generation, I think if you play her with Fischl, most of the time you will be playing her with Fischl, but not always. But I didn't find any trouble in terms of energy generation, and I was having my burst on rotation almost every time. Regarding her cons, she has a weirdly low uptime that causes halls in her rotations, and by that I mean that she will be out of sync sometimes with her teammates. Yeah, you swap to her and she's still on cooldown, and it's a bit awkward. There's definitely ways to go around it, and for me personally it's not that big of a deal, because you can either like swap her rotation in a way where like start with burst, or play her with Thundering Fury or whatever. It's not that big of a deal in my opinion. But what is actually her biggest con, in my opinion, is her lack of resistance to interruption. This is by far the worst thing about Clorinde, and I think that every person who wants to get this unit needs to be aware of this before playing the character, before getting the character. You can have perfect runs, everything can go smoothly, everything can go perfectly, but most of the time you will get hit here and there, and it just feels terrible to get interrupted because you have such a tight period of DPS, and if you're getting interrupted during that, you're losing a big chunk of damage, and you have to go back to do your combo, and it's really annoying. Especially since other units like Raiden, for example, do have this resistance to interruption built in their kit. In the case of Raiden, it's in her ult. So it's really weird that they didn't went with it with Clorinde, especially since she has such a low uptime. But then the more I played her, the more I told myself, maybe if she had that, she would have been a bit too strong. So I don't know, but yeah, it's definitely the biggest con about Clorinde, and I had to talk about it, especially since Hoyoverse being Hoyoverse, they sell you a resistance to interruption that is increased on her C2. So they know that it is a problem in her kit, and they sell you the solution that is some classic Hoyoverse. Other cons could be also her E, where she sometimes double dash, and I'm really aware that this could be either an issue on my end because my keyboard is just dying, I guess, or because I'm mashing. But I can swear that sometimes I didn't even have my finger on the button, on the E button, and she was still double dashing. So it could be related to ping, to lag, to I don't know. But that was definitely something happening in my gameplay. And maybe that's also because of the auto targeting when I wasn't using the directional keys. And yeah, if you're not using the directional keys, she sometimes have the same issue as Xiao, for example. She just go away in another direction completely far from the enemy, and yeah, that's definitely noticeable. She doesn't have great AoE also. When the enemy starts splitting up, it feels really bad because you're basically locked into just one enemy and she doesn't deal like crazy insane damage. So yeah, it feels really bad, and people can tell you that, yeah, well, you just have to go back to Kazuha and get those enemies grouped up again. But again, he has a window of DPS that is so short, and her uptime is so short, so you go back to Kazuha and then you go back to her, she loses her infusion. So it can be frustrating when enemies are not perfectly lined up. The last thing I want to stress out is for people with high ping, please test her out before getting her, because her Bond of Life mechanic seems to be server side. So the more ping you have, the less likely you're gonna get the full combo, because it takes time to register. So yeah, make sure to test her before getting her in that case. And that's it for the pros and cons of Clorinde, in my opinion. Overall, I feel like she has S tier levels of animations and visuals, but her gameplay is where Hoyo dropped the ball a little bit. In my case, I started feeling that the gameplay was getting a bit repetitive and less engaging after a few hours of playing her, and the lack of resistance to interruption was definitely frustrating in multiple occasions. I would say though that she is the best electro DPS on my account. She is better than my Keqing, my Raiden, and my Sino in terms of performance. But because of those few gameplay issues, I still prefer running my Keqing team that is more quick swap friendly and smoother, in my opinion. Or maybe I'm just a Keqing simp. I don't know. She reminds me a bit of Sino in terms of team building. I talked about it in my previous Baisu video, where I was saying that building a team for Sino felt like solving a puzzle and making concessions. And in a way, I felt that with Clorinde. So basically you go full performance at first, and then you start getting annoyed at being hit, so you want a shield, so you drop a bit of performance, or you get her a healer. And the healer can mess up with your combos because the incoming healing affects her Bond of Life percentage, and so on. You know what I mean? Like, she definitely had that issue, or I felt that issue rather. But though I have to say that recently I tried her in this team. I'm a big fan of Raiden with Yelan, Furina, and Jin. So I tried her with this and replaced Yelan with Xingqiu to bring some resistance to interruption. And it felt way better, and I really enjoyed playing this despite having lower clear times compared to her more meta teams. So to summarize, she has great performance but few gameplay issues that you have to be aware of. You can either adapt to them by playing better, you could solve those issues by like bringing units like Kirara, Zhongli, or Xingqiu. You can put her on TF to fix her uptime stuff. So you're always like trading some performance for more comfort, and that's completely fine with her. By the way, I am actually really glad that this Abyss wasn't tailor-made for her, because we got to see her in a realistic environment, which is a great thing in my opinion. It's worth noting though that she still benefits from the Abyss blessing compared to units like Keqing or Yae in aggravate teams, for example. but the selection of enemies isn't optimal for her, and I don't know what's going to be in the next Abyss, but I'm pretty certain that it will be way better than this one, because Hoyo will try to sell her better, obviously, but I really enjoyed that this Abyss was a bit, you know, not optimal for her. So yeah, is she worth pulling? In my opinion, I think she is a great unit while being completely skippable at the same time. Especially in the case where you have units like Raiden, Keqing, Cyno, or Yae. She basically has a low pull value, and I feel like the fact she came out after monsters like Neuvillette or Arlecchino made a lot of people dunk on her for no reason. She is not bad by any mean, and she performs pretty well. It's just that her gameplay might not be for everyone, and that's totally fine. If you have questions about her, feel free to comment below, and I'll do my best to answer them. That is it for me. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.